Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amy Wolf. I'm the programming coordinator here at the Osterville Village Library. Thank you so much for joining us on this very rainy Saturday. And to our friends joining us on Zoom, thank you for being here with us as well. We are excited to welcome David Margaretos and Garrett Frass from the Cape Cod Bonsai Club. We are excited to welcome the Cape Cod Bonsai Club here with us today to talk about the history and ancient art of bonsai. Many months ago, when I contacted them to have their event here, I could not wait to get to September, and here we are. It is fall. Happy first official day of fall. The Cape Cod Bonsai Club was founded in 1989 by Fred Whittemire of Osterville, Massachusetts, and has operated continuously for the past 35 years. Their mission is to share ideas and advance their collective learning in bonsai. The club has a long history of participating in exhibits to promote the club and enhance the public's exposure to the art of bonsai. Without further ado, the Cape Cod Bonsai Club.
Thank you, Amy. It's a pleasure to be here. Today, we're going to talk about the history and art of bonsai. We are from the Cape Cod Bonsai Club. I'm David Margaretos, and this is Garrett Frass. We're both members of the club. I joined the club about 10 years ago, and I think Garrett's been in the club for 15 years or so. We're both past presidents of the club. We currently have about 30 members. We meet over at the Cod Center for the Arts, which is just nearby. I put on the slide here our website address, capecodbonsai.com. Doesn't get much simpler than that. And there's a lot more information about the club and what we're doing and some pictures and things on the website. But we generally meet the second Monday of every month. We have a couple of special activities in the summer and one around the holidays. But we invite all of you to check us out. You're welcome to drop in and visit and see what we're all about. This works, yeah. So as Amy mentioned, our club was founded in 35 years ago, which is really amazing. And we've been in continuous operation. And our founder is right here from the village of Osterville. I didn't know Fred, but he was one of the founding members. We do a lot of what we're all about is learning about bonsai and sharing with each other. Essentially, our meetings are we do workshops and we have classes. Sometimes we have guest speakers, but it's all about learning, and we learn from each other. We all have developed bonsai skills and expertise in different ways and along the ways, and we share it by doing activities and things together. But we also like to share bonsai with the community. We brought some bonsai here today because there's nothing like seeing them alive. But we like to also present, give talks like this. Or do exhibits when we can. I listed some of the places where we've exhibited over the years. The Cape Cod Museum of Natural History, the Cultural Center of Cape Cod and Hyannis, Highfield Hall in Falmouth. We did a nice exhibit a few years ago in conjunction with a display of woodblock prints that women artists had done. And so the bonsai went very nicely with those. Each year we exhibit with at the Hyannis Rotary Club's Home and Garden Show, which is in Hyannis. I'm sure we'll be there again in March. And we just completed a 7-week exhibit at the Cod Center for the Arts, where we had a rotating display of bonsai for 7 weeks, which was very, very nice. So by the way, we'll keep this informal. We'll ask for questions at the end, but if there's something that you just absolutely need to know as we're talking, please just feel free to ask your questions. We're glad to do the best that we can. So I started with a slide on what are bonsai. a lot of people's exposure to bonsai comes from either watching The Karate Kid or the movie The Karate Kid, or seeing pictures in a book, but have not really seen a live bonsai close up. But bonsai comes from the Japanese words bon, meaning a small dish or bowl, and sai, which is a tree that's planted in a container. So literally, bonsai are trees that are planted in containers. But they're a lot more than just that. There are replication of trees as we see them naturally in nature. They're a combination of both horticultural and aesthetic values and things that we put together. And it's also a very ancient art form that we can enjoy, practice, and enjoy in today's modern world. Bonsai began a long time ago, originally in China, as far back as the year 700 AD, and they were a way to bring nature indoors. The ruling class or the wealthy people would have their gardeners plant trees in containers, and they would bring them in the courtyards or indoors where they could enjoy them indoors as well. Penjing, which is the precursor of bonsai, means trade planting. And then Japanese visitors brought them back to Japan. My research showed that is as far back as 1,200 years ago. There are accounts dating back as far as 1,000 years, and the first images, the drawings of bonsai go back 800 years. So they truly are an old art form. Once bonsai were brought to Japan, they continued to sort of develop into the art form that we know as today, which is, and I wrote here, an idealized representation of nature that incorporates elements of Japanese art and culture. So it's worth mentioning that idealized because these trees remind us of trees in nature, but they're not exactly like trees in nature. They're almost a little too nice, right? Trees in nature is subject to the elements, wind and broken branches and fire and dead branches and dead leaves and things like that. You notice that we don't really have a lot of dead leaves on our bonsai, right? But so they've been stylized to a degree and idealized to sort of a more perfect reflection of nature. And in a bit, Garrett's going to talk about bonsai design. We'll touch a little bit more on that and what that actually means. Bonsai are organized lots of different ways, certainly by species, and we have a variety of different species of bonsai. We'll see everything from pines and maples to tropical plants. Almost every species of tree has some representation in the bonsai world. They're also categorized by size. They have different names and classifications. For example, bonsai that are no higher than 6 inches are called shohin bonsai, and they have different groupings. And some bonsai can be several feet tall. We also organize by habitat, whether they are tropical or subtropical, cold hardy. I think all of these are cold hardy trees, so these trees can remain outdoors here on Cape Cod all winter long, and even with sub-zero temperatures, they will generally do fine. And in fact, these trees would not do well if brought indoors because in the wintertime, because they need to, just like in nature, they need to have a dormancy period during the cold months. And then style or design, which Garrett is going to go into, but that deals with the structure of the tree, the shape of the trunk, the design of the branches and needles or leaves and things, and a very, very important element of bonsai. So, and to achieve those elements of design, lots of different tools are used, and we were chatting a little bit about that before we started talking, but pruning is one of the most common, you probably know this in gardening, but when you prune a branch here, the branch tends to grow out in the other direction, so pruning is an important element. We use wiring, sort of like orthodontia. We wrap wires around the branches so that we can sort of bend them and train them in shapes. Or we have guy wires that pull the branches in a certain direction. We can remove branches, or we can graft branches on sometimes to create the design or style that we want. There are horticultural techniques like pinching the needles, or cutting the candles on a pine, defoliating, taking the leaves off so you get a second crop of smaller leaves, or lots of different horticultural techniques that we use as well to create those designs and styles. Did I miss anything? Clamps are also used to sort of pull branches together or separate them apart. So the bonsai hobby or art form today is really quite extensive, and it is worldwide. I put down here the first world bonsai convention was held in 1980 in Japan, but that from there it's moved out, and that there are now international conventions like this that are hosted by different countries around the world. The art of bonsai is practiced in over 110 countries. It's estimated that there are over 100,000 enthusiasts that are members of over 1,500 clubs worldwide. So it's quite an extensive organization. They estimate that there are over 5 million hobbyists, bonsai hobbyists worldwide. There are a lot of people that, while they don't belong to a club, an organization, they might have a bonsai that they acquired or that they developed at home, or have a couple in their garden. In the United States, we have more than 100 clubs in 37 states, and there are 9 regional associations. And for example, our local Cape Cod Bonsai Club is a member of the Mid-Atlantic Bonsai Society. And for example, the Mid-Atlantic has usually an annual convention and a show and things like that. There are many excellent places where you can view bonsai nurseries or exhibits. I think Amy mentioned, but one of the preeminent ones is the National Arboretum in Washington, D.C., where there's a bonsai, very extensive bonsai and Penjing Museum. And I believe correctly, that exhibit was started by a gift from the Japanese after World War II. I think that's
In the one in
DC.
in DC, no, it was a gift in 1976 as our bicentennial gift.
Oh, that's right. That is right.
Yeah.
And from Japan.
Yeah, yes.
So,
A peace offering
yeah.
from Japan.
And if you are traveling along the eastern seaboard, it's certainly worth a stop to go in.
It's amazing.
Really very, very, very nice. A little closer to home at the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens, there's a world-class bonsai exhibit there. And then there's usually a national bonsai exhibition that's held in different locations around the country in the United States. The last one, I believe, was in 2023 at the International Bonsai Nursery in Rochester, New York, as part of the convention that was held there. I will mention that there are not any bonsai nurseries on Cape Cod, but there are 2 that are within driving distance. The closest is New England Bonsai Gardens in Bellingham, Massachusetts. So it's up just up past Foxborough on 495, and they have a large collection of bonsai. They have all the things that you would need to make bonsai. tree stock, tools, soils,
Pots.
bonsai pots, right? And they have a group of classes that you can sign up and take, and they even have a bonsai study group that meets there regularly. A little further north on Route 495 in Littleton, Massachusetts, is Bonsai West. There's another very large bonsai nursery, and they have all of the above, all the tools, the soils, lots of plants, finished bonsai, and what we call pre-bonsai, which is just nursery stock that looks like it might make a good bonsai. They have an especially nice display, outdoor display of specimen quality bonsai, many of them very old and large. And even if you're just driving to New Hampshire or Maine or something like that, Bonsai West is only 5 minutes off of the highway. It's worth a stop because spending half an hour strolling through their garden and viewing those bonsai is really serene and very, very nice. It's definitely, you won't be disappointed if you make this stop. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about the appeal of bonsai and what attracts people to the art and the hobby of bonsai. And as I mentioned before, it's unique in that it allows us to combine both horticultural skills with an interest in art and beauty. And there are a few things in life that allow us to do that. And certainly bonsai is one of them. Bonsai give us an opportunity to learn about the nature and requirements of many, many interesting trees that we might necessarily come in contact with. And they do require some focus and attention, and it can be very extremely satisfying and rewarding to learn how to grow a tree successfully and keep it healthy and vibrant in a container. It's not quite the same as sort of doing it in our yard. They require that we learn and apply different aspects of design in Eastern art. It's a little bit different than Western art. Garrett's going to talk a little bit more about it, but it tends to incorporate more asymmetric elements of design as opposed to the traditional Western arts, which tend to be more symmetric. They draw our focus towards more detailed observation of nature. As you can see, it's easy to be drawn to sort of all of the details of how the tree grows and how it buds, how it flowers, and it's a little different than taking a walk through the woods or a conservation trail when we sort of get the big picture, but we observe the trees from a distance, growing and taking care of bonsai brings your focus a lot closer. They certainly teach us patience in the longer view of nature. We tend to be a little bit impatient in our society today. We want something that we can do today, or like a project we can get done this weekend. That's hardly the case with bonsai. Sometimes we'll look at a tree and we'll say, oh, well, it really needs more development in this area, or needs some branching here, or hopefully we'll get it to back bud on this, on the trunk here. These are projects that will take years to sort of realize. And it's nice because it helps slow us down a little bit and think about the big picture. But it's extremely rewarding to have a plant, to have a tree that's been in your care for a number of years, and to reflect on what it was like when we started with it and what it's become today. Let's see. Bonsai are a wonderful way in which we can display and show our artwork. It's an important part actually of the hobby of bonsai is the display of them and sharing. And there are some very formal ways to do that. But, you know, myself, it's nice from time to time, I'll bring one of my bonsai in from the garden, bring it into the house and use it as a centerpiece or just as a display, like when we're having people over or something. And, but they really go beautifully indoors as well. Right, so you may be wondering, like, is bonsai for me? And, well, that's a question only you can answer, but I do want to share with you that, if you're a gardener, you know, bonsai, you know, maybe for a way for you to, enhance your gardening interests. Do we have any gardeners here? Right? Everyone's a little bit of a gardener, right? Whether it's tomatoes or daisies in the flower bed or window boxes or some plants in the sunny window or something like that. But you know, if you are a gardener, you already have an interest in sort of plants and nature and you like to watch things grow. You have some level of horticultural skills. You understand the plants have certain requirements for light and water and nutrition and care and you know, bonsai can help enhance all of those skills as well. Working with bonsai will certainly expand your horticultural knowledge and takes you in contact with lots of different types of species of trees with different requirements to provide a creative outlet. You get to learn a little bit about an ancient art form and how it was performed in the past and what are traditional and modern ways of doing bonsai. I wrote here, it allows you to garden on a smaller scale, it's less physically taxing. So at some point, you know, tending to a big garden outdoors can be more than what we want it to, you know, to be. And it's nice to work with something small. You know, one of the most relaxing things I do is bring one of my bonsai up like on the table on the deck, put some music on and sit there for a couple of hours and pruning and wiring and training. It's very relaxing and a little bit easier than weeding, bending over and weeding in the flower bed or something like that, or dragging around sacks of fertilizer and things. So it's certainly worth considering if you have an interest in plants or if you like to garden, whether learning about bonsai might be a way to enhance your interest. All right, so before I hand it over, any questions at this point, or there'll be plenty of opportunity at the end, we can answer more questions. So hand it over to Gary, who's going to tell you a little bit about some of the details of bonsai design.
Thank you. So bonsai as a horticultural art. Now there's a loaded statement right there. We could talk for a week about that. So as you can see, it's both the manipulation of and horticultural development of a tree to achieve a design, right? So, you know, as the slide is pointing out, it's creating an illusion, an idealized image, and one of the main principles is creating age in a tree. So that's achieved with a couple of different through a couple of different methods. Say, looking at this tree right here, you can see how the trunk has got flare to it. It also, the trunk then has a hierarchy of being thicker, thinner, thinnest, branches to the top. These kinds of things are used to create an illusion of age in a tree. So a young tree would be just a pencil sticking straight up. So an older tree might have the impact of wind, snow, have some desiccation to it from a branch dying or something like that. And so we go to various techniques of trying to create an illusion of age. With this tree right here, about 15 years ago, it was a seedling that was the size of my little finger. I let the seedling grow out to be 15 feet tall. Then I came, got out my trusty saw. I sawed it off right here. And then it bushed out in new branches. I took off many of the branches. I let one more grow. It grew out to be 10, 15 feet tall. And then I came back in and I took my saw out and I chopped it again. And I did that a series of times to the point where I got to the height I wanted. And through that, as well as the manipulation of wire on the existing branches, and with pruning, I was able to achieve a design such as this right here. So that's kind of in a 1 minute nutshell, how you might achieve that with a project like this. And then this is also, kind of aligning with principles of Japanese aesthetic, as well as trying to enhance the characteristics of this particular species. This is a Chinese elm tree. It's a miniaturized Chinese elm tree. It has a very, very small leaves on it, and it has a characteristic of having very, very dense, compact branching on it. And so I'm not trying to make it look like a pine tree. I'm not trying to make it look like an azalea. I'm not trying to make it look like any other kind of species than an elm tree. So if you were to think about what an elm tree might look like in nature, it has upward growing branches, this, that, and the other kind of thing. And so this is trying to bring that idea of age into this tree, which is only, say, 15-ish years old. Same can be, held for all of these different trees here on display. We've got a azalea here. We've got 2 varieties of Hinoki cypress. We've got a American larch here, and we have got a Cotoneaster right here. Again, this is one that was plucked from a garden in front of somebody's house that no longer wanted to be in the garden, and it had a nice thick trunk on it and some branching. They will bud quite regularly. They have a sprawling, kind of low creeping characteristic. So in this design, that kind of characteristic was then enhanced with this right here. So it's sitting in a low slung pot, emphasizing kind of how horizontal it might be. Then the tree trunk is curved as it might be, so that if, say, this top branch were one that was growing straight up, it might have been smashed by some snow or something like that to bring it into this low slung kind. Plus, they are just a kind of creeping variety of tree. And so if you look at it kind of, in plan, then the branches are then all wired out such that, the top branches don't overshadow the lower branches, so that then it gets a nice even amount of sun all over the plant. By doing that, what I like to call it gives it kind of a, it's kind of hyper, in its utilization of sunlight, soil, water, all that kind of thing, because we have manipulated it to such a great degree. So, let's see. One of the things that many of the things that we manipulate is rootage, trunk, branches, canopy, apex. So when we talk about apex, we're talking about the top of the tree. Nabari is the root flare at the bottom of the tree. The branching is is wanting to have a hierarchy of branching. So generally, you see a tree that's got a level of first branch, second branch, back branch, and then it cascades up into an apex. The first branch generally is categorized as what they call a character branch. And that generally sets the tone for the rest of the tree. And then the rest of the branches then show kind of how the tree creates and finishes out that profile that you want to see. So Japanese aesthetics always has a frontal direction. They want to emphasize a front, much like many of the slides that we had in the previous. See our caricature up here, which my display is in the way of, shows this piece, right? It has this very, very stylized but intentional profile to the tree right there. So while that is a drawing, it's a drawing of a real tree. And that real tree emphasizes how the age of that tree, the trunk manipulation, the trunk shape, as well as branch placement, as well as apex shape. Even this little piece of deadwood that pokes out the top, all go into composing a bonsai. This negative space right here is all very intentional. The profile of the irregularity of the in and out of the branching and how each of those pads are created show what it takes to create a bonsai in its final composition. So when we're talking about these pieces right here, all those pieces are being attempted in these different compositions. And again, one of the bigger ideas is looking at the asymmetry of a composition. So again, you're seeing a curved and asymmetrically placed trunk with a triangular disposition of foliage. You can see how that's done in each of those examples up there on the screen. One of the other central pieces in bonsai composition is pot. Pot is both a glazed pot or a natural colored clay, depending upon the tree. So generally, deciduous trees such as a Chinese elm or an azalea, even though azaleas are not 100% deciduous, they have glazed containers. So you see infamous Japanese maple that you see in bonsai containers all the time, always a glazed container. My elm is in a glazed container, then the conifer trees and elongating species. These are the Hinoki cypress. This is a American larch. Tend to be in unglazed natural clay containers. The containers are trying to establish, again, a feeling of age in the tree. They're trying to emphasize characteristics of the tree that make it look more aged, as well as the characteristics of the plant in itself. If this tree has got a container that has a proportion to the trunk and the height of the tree. Okay, apologize for the dirt, it came out of the rain this morning, but that kind of thing is thought about very, very carefully in the manipulation of how this works. Then each of the containers might have different characteristics. This one has got a lip on it. It also has some decoration at the bottom. It's got a glaze with some character to it. So those kind of things are considered when doing this. You can have, as you can see, there's many different kinds of containers. And then there's also containers that are more, convey a different kind of feeling. So one of the things that you can see is, depending upon the plant or the composition, I should say a cascade over there on the far side has got a tall container that emphasizes the verticality of what we're doing there. The Jonathan Cross container up there at the top has a rocky feeling, like it's, you might be on a cliff of the Rocky Mountains or something like that. Then there's the slab over there, which might look like, might feel like you're on in a rocky forest, or something like that. And then this crescent piece right here might give you the idea that this plant was growing in a outcropping on the side of a mountain. Kind of thing. So in doing a composition of the tree, putting it in a container, it creates a display. So one of the things that Japanese culture and has imbued into bonsai is the want of displaying the tree. So the bonsai exhibit has always been a part of bonsai, and it's one of these things where they use it to kind of show their expertise in what they can accomplish. So it shows whether you are a beginner or whether you're very, very expert. You put out a display showing where you are and what you can do. And David and I were having a discussion on the way over about how the kind of difference in Western culture, many of our art, we do have museums and galleries, but it's more kind of oriented towards kind of sale, kind of transactional kind of things, whereas in Japan, the culture is more about showing what you can do. So, whoops, wrong way. I knew I was going to do that. So again, this is the typical way you see an exhibit being done as a bonsai exhibit with a large number of bonsai gathered together in a display. And even within that line right there, that has been very carefully composed in terms of the direction and flow of the different trees, how the miniature accent plants are placed. Each one has a specific kind of pedestal, and all that. It's all quite a very, very elaborate set of rules. And generally, when you have a bonsai, a professional bonsai garden has an area where they have a display area, and you can see that that's what's done. And so many enthusiasts have their backyards set up so that they can have their bonsai display put out that way. So here are our basics in some kind of the compositional basics. We always love to show people about the different, I'm just going to flip through them very quickly. But you can see that there's formal upright, informal upright. So we have some examples of informal uprights here. Okay, so this one and this one right here, several of them over there. Slanting styles, you know, you could say that maybe this guy right here, down here might be a slanting style. We got these two over here that are in the slanting realm, kind of thing. Windswept, semi-cascade, and then full cascade. Have a broom style. Some trees, Japanese white bark elm, zelkovas, they are very, very prone to growing in a broom style. So they are very, very easily made in that way. This tree right here could be made into a broom style if you were able to manipulate it in that direction. You have various kinds of multi-trunk trees. So they can either have different root bases or they can have a singular root and there's multiple trees coming from one root. And then there's the ever popular forest or group planting, which is really great when you are just getting into bonsai and you have a bunch of immature material. You can make really interesting compositions as forests, but don't think that that's any easier to do than any other method of composing a tree, because it is very difficult. And then one of the other ones, which is, while singularly poetic, beautiful, and simple, is again one of the most difficult to do, is what they call a literate or Jin style tree. Be able to get that to be a classic, and just the rules for making Jin are a week's worth of discussion in and of itself right there too. So it's all good. So I know off camera, I have a display of a lot of the tools and the wire and other things that we have for helping us with these. But it is a wonderful pursuit that I enjoy immensely, because again, it combines what I love, which is composition and horticulture, into something that is beautiful and fun to do. So I'm pretty much, any questions?
Dave was saying earlier about the leaves, that if you pinch them off, they come back smaller.
Yes,
They do.
in certain, or in many varieties, they do, yes.
Does that work, so did I say azalea or rhodey?
It will work to a degree with azalea,
Yeah,
but that already has a pretty small leaf, so the level of reduction that you're getting is modest.
yeah.
Okay, so this particular Chinese elm is a Yatsubusa
Mhm.
elm, which already has very, very small leaves, so no matter how much you pinch that,
You're not gonna get-
it's not gonna get much smaller. But if you started with a Japanese maple,
Yeah.
a full-size Japanese maple, and it's got a leaf that's fairly big.
Yeah.
But then if you cut it, and manipulate it, it will reduce about half the size.
Yeah.
And there's other varieties. Beech is another one, but yeah, that will reduce in size. For Japanese beeches, American beeches will not, okay? So European beeches will.
Yeah.
But American beeches have the biggest leaf and they also don't like to be potted. American beeches.
Right.
Yeah. Tried
Yeah,
and,
see, I put one in a pot, and it seemed like it was doing good, and then the nematodes showed up this past year. I don't know if I'm familiar with that, but
yes,
all the leaves just sprinkled up.
yes.
It's like, just to say that I took it out of a pot and I planted it,
Uh-huh.
you know, it's kind of a work in progress.
Yeah, I have not had any luck with American.
This is a wild plant.
Right. Again, I've
It's too bad, 'cause they're beautiful trees.
They are, but the leaf tends not to reduce.
Hmm.
So some, depending upon the tree, some trees, they reduce in size and some they don't.
Yeah. I see, you tend to do more wiring. Do sometimes some purists, they just say, just trim, don't wire anything.
I would say that they're not the purists.
Yeah,
So the
well, I mean,
purists.
in their own mind, they're purists.
The purists are, people that wire
Yeah.
every day, all the time.
So there's no,
There are some, trees
Mhm.
that you can't wire because the branching is too brittle.
yeah,
It just sort of break and it doesn't really accept a lot of wiring, so another option.
Yeah, so, yeah, this is a Hinoki cypress right here.
Mhm.
It's a very specialized variety of Hinoki cypress
So,
called a Seca is the varietal of this.
mhm.
And as you can see this spring, I've completely wired this out, from the every branch. I pruned the branches, thinned the branches, wired the branches. And so, and as you can see, one of the things that it's doing now, that it has been kind of laid out, so to speak, is that it is growing consistently from top to bottom and side to side.
Mhm.
So you can see the light colored tips everywhere. Whereas if I hadn't done this, there would be a big blob of light growth at the top
There's no way you're gonna trim that.
and you cannot.
Yeah.
So there was this spring, a big
Yeah.
blob of growth at the top.
Mhm.
All that was cleaned out so that individual branches form. So each one of these little tips right here now are gonna puff out into individual branches. And then as those grow out, I will thin those, wire those, so that eventually I'm gonna have a tree that maybe is 3 inches bigger all the way around
Mhm.
in this, and it's all gonna be grown out so that the sun can get to each of these branches and each of these places equally. And that will allow it to grow consistently and controlled and slowly for years and years and years. If it were going to not be done like that, the top would grow and the bottom branches would die.
How long do you leave the wires in?
So depending upon the species, it might be anywhere from 6 weeks to that tree right there. I might be able to leave the wire on for a year. And it all depends upon a bunch of different things, like a beech has got very fine, pristine bark that you don't want to injure. Because when you injure the bark on a beech, it will never recover. Whereas that right there will continue to grow and get craggier and craggier. So sometimes the mistake actually makes the tree look older, okay? And there's some wire marks on this tree right here. This tree right here, there was some wire when I purchased it. It was in the discard rack because it had overgrown wire. And so there's actually wire buried inside the trunk of this tree that they didn't feel like was repairable. I just took a chance. It survived. So, but you know, that kind of thing is all, you know, and like you see with guy wires, this tree right here and this tree right here. As soon as I wire it and unwire it, it springs back up because it's just the character of the tree. So it's
Using those wires to pull the branches down, and as you mentioned, we're trying to create the illusion of age. And the tapering of the trunk was one of the things you mentioned, but also the angle of the branches. A young tree tends to have branches that point out like that, whereas an old tree has branches that are pointing down. So that's part of creating that illusion of age.
How often do you water these?
So, obviously on a rainy Saturday like today, we don't water them. I tend to water mine once a day.
Once a day?
Yeah. And that's because they're in a pot. They're in a well draining clay. So this tree right here, you can see it doesn't have it. It's got this very it's not fine, but it's not heavy. It's got this crumbly clay. It's Japanese. It's called akadama. Okay, so that has this really amazing characteristic of being able to let air into the root system as well as hold water in the root system. Okay, so one of the things, since it doesn't have tap roots, there's no need to hold the root in. A lot of times tap roots go down to water to support the tree. But this creates then fine roots, a multiplicity of fine roots, many more fine roots. So there's a relationship between the root structure that's in the pot that you can't see and the branches here. So the more fine roots you have down here, the more fine branching you're going to have up here. It's indisputable how that works right there, because if you have one root down here, you're going to have not very many branches up above. It's really phenomenal.
What indicates to you, I mean, it sure depends on the tree, what indicates to you that needs to be repotted, if it's repotted?
So, great question. One of the first things that you can do is you can lift the tree up and you can look at the bottom of the pot.
Okay.
And if you can see,
That's cheating.
if you see roots growing out of the drain holes, then you know there's way too many roots in there. Let's just see, this one right here, it might be the case. Nope, not quite
Yeah,
yet.
that's pretty obvious,
Right, so then the other thing is when I talk about that water and oxygen piece right there, so that is hypercritical. For a tree to be healthy is that you water it and the water flushes right through the pot. If the water flushes right through the pot, then it's not root bound, okay? If the water pools at the top of the pot and there's so many roots in the pot that the water doesn't immediately seep down through, then
they need to be cleaned out.
yeah, so you have to pull it out of the pot, completely get rid of all the soil, cut the roots back, put it back into the pot with new soil. So like right now, it's getting on to fall,
Right,
right? One of the big signs for a tree that's root bound and needs to be repot is that the leaves fall off early,
right.
okay? If there's a relationship between the, what's that word for leaf turning, sensinus or something, I forget what it is. What is that?
Photosynthesis?
No, that's the converting, it's. I can't remember, it's a. So anyway, like I have at least 2 trees where, in my garden right now, where the leaves have already turned red and fallen off.
Yeah.
So I
A
know
little early.
those guys right there need to be repotted in the springtime.
You keep these exclusively outside, or you have a greenhouse, or you keep them inside, I mean, in a greenhouse for the winter, or?
So, my collection
Mhm,
is oriented towards hardy trees.
you know,
So the hardier, in my mind, the better.
mhm.
So I have trees that can survive outside all.
Do you
winter.
insulate the pots?
So I mulch my trees
mulch.
in. I put them in my vegetable garden.
Uh-huh.
I cover it up with pine needles.
Okay.
I dig them into the dirt a little bit.
Mhm.
So just that little bit of change right there will keep a hard freeze from happening
Yeah.
to the plant,
Yeah.
the root structure of the plant. Now, there are obviously there's a huge range of trees out there. There are trees that have no, like, people buy Sarissa all the time from the nurseries because they're so beautiful, they flower and everything like that. They die in a second, okay? So you just have to understand where the plant hardiness is. This tree right here is an American larch. This survives in arboreal forest all the way up,
Don't we call that here, around here, we call it hackmatack?
like tamarack.
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 Oh,
Exactly. So this is the deciduous conifer.
Uh-huh.
So this turns yellow and all the leaves fall off in the wintertime. So it's,
You did all these? These are all yours?
I've done 4 of them.
Nice.
And,
One of the important things in the winter though is to protect them from strong, cold winds.
Mhm.
Because the wind blowing over the tree will tend to desiccate and pull that moisture out of it. So it's good to put a
It is-
protected area.
if you have a greenhouse or can afford to run a greenhouse
Yeah.
or want to run a greenhouse,
Yeah.
and it's more of a cold frame than a greenhouse, unless you have tropicals.
I have like a 3-season room with a lot of glass, but it's not.
That's perfect. So long as you keep it between 30 and 50 degrees in the wintertime.
Yeah.
It's perfect for keeping it inside. But the ideal temperature in the wintertime is somewhere between 30 and 40 degrees,
Mhm.
just above freezing.
Right, pretty good.
Cat and Easter, cat on Easter, I mean, those things. Other than the fact that it's in a pot, you can't kill it,
No,
It's-
good to know.
it's very, very hardy, right? Hanoki cypress are, from the north of Japan,
Mhm.
China, Korea, can get incredibly, cold. Don't mind it a bit. One of the oldest Hanoki cypress bonsai in the world is up at the Lars Anderson, collection
Oh, okay.
at the Harvard, what's the, Arboretum
Arboretum, yeah.
in Jamaica Plain there.
Mhm.
You ever have a chance to go to Jamaica Plain and go to that Arboretum? It's kind of a difficult park and visit and all that kind of stuff. But they've got some amazing, in the summertime and fall, they've got some amazing bonsai to look at there.
Mhm.
And one of them is a Hanoki cypress that was started in 1675. So they're very, very hardy. I mean, azaleas, they love it here on Cape Cod.
Yeah.
And, yes,
Couple questions.
Sure.
When does Cape Cod Bonsai work meet?
The second Monday of every month. Except for January, and we have January and August, we have an auction. every
Okay.
month. It's 6:30. Sometimes we start early, if we have a program that takes a lot of time.
Here at the library?
No, at the Catuan Center for the Arts.
Oh, it's good to it.
Right in the back, there's what they call a little schoolhouse, and in there.
I have a blue spruce and I didn't think, what style should I be?
Well, I mean, I've seen blue spruce done in almost every different style that I showed up there. One of the most famous blue spruce in the United States is a full cascade, blue spruce. But there are, it's a great species for bonsai.
But one of the most interesting questions is, what style bonsai should I make from this plant? And we do a lot of that at the club. Somebody will maybe pick up something at the nursery, not a bonsai, but a nursery plant.
That's what this is.
And we will all get up and look at it and turn it around and say, well, you could do this or you could do that, but that's one of the more interesting and one of the more primary decisions to make is like, what style bonsai do I think this could become? And,
These trees, the beginning of growth, are they, how long have they been growing? Type of thing.
Well, let's see, I was saying that this one right here is about 15 years old right here.
So you keep that inside,
No, it's
Okay.
outside 100% of the time.
they grow slow.
Oh, I've helped it grow slow. Because it's in a pot. I've slowed the growth down, okay?
so remember his story with the
No,
salt.
she wasn't, going back to this one right here. So this tree right here was started as a seedling this
Okay.
big. I planted it in the ground in a garden, okay? I let it grow up to be 15 feet tall, okay? I took this saw out. I cut it right there. You can see the remnants of the cut right there. I chopped off the top of the tree. It sprouted out again. Because it wants to grow. It wasn't dead. A plant, it's either gonna die or it's gonna grow,
Yeah,
right? So sprouts back out. At the end of at the fall, about this time of year, I cut back all of those sprouts so that there might be 2 or 3 sprouts left. It created this branch right here. It created this branch right here. I might have left 3 or 4 more on to help heal this up. I let this branch grow out to be 15 feet tall again. Then took my saw out and I chopped it right there.
what did you do with the branches that you cut in your plant them?
I threw them in the compost.
Or you
Yeah, I can't, because when I cut them off, it's generally not the time when they want to grow again.
Okay.
Now, you can air layer plants and do things like that to create the bonsai, but it just adds a level of time into things. You're essentially using another entire season to grow out the roots so that you can cut the roots off. Now, I do that. I've got 4 air layers going at my garden right now, creating.
How is it, the curve of it, how does that happen? Do you make it happen? Do you make it happen? Very-
There's nothing on any of these trees right here in front of you that we haven't made happen.
uh, I have bushes at home that start to turn yellow, and I've given them polytone, and I don't know why some of them are turning yellow.
Yeah, it's,
They're,
you gotta have a horticultural sense about what to do with these
yeah,
things.
yeah, these are different than the bushes.
Mhm,
Absolutely.
mhm.
They're beautiful.
Garrett mentioned that he started this in the ground. And we do that frequently when we acquire some nursery stock, is that we might do some fundamental pruning, but then plant it in the ground for a few years, because it will really grow so much better, unconstrained from the pond. And that's when you'll see the thickening of the trunk, or you get those long shoots. Once we containerize it, you're probably not gonna get that kind of growth again.
What made you get into this particular thing of love? I'm just curious, what
Well,
started it?
I enjoy design. I'm an architect. And so I love composing and creating and making things. And then I also grew up growing things. So,
Okay. So something a little different and.
yeah. I still have my vegetable garden, but, this is another outlet for me wanting to grow things. Yes.
So if you take it from the ground, I assume you cut off that tap root. How much can you trim the other roots without causing damage?
It's all the species dependent,
Okay,
okay? But many of these can be cut back fairly severely. So a cat and Easter, right? That root ball, I can trim over 50% of the roots that are growing. So when I take this out of the pot, take all the soil out, I comb all the roots out, so there's all, that little thing has got roots that are whirling around inside that pot. You spread them all out. Those roots might make a footprint that's a foot in diameter. I cut that back so that it's maybe only 4 or 5 inches in diameter that fit inside that pot, and that you cut the bottom off flat so that it's that act in and of itself helps make the nabari or root flare work
so
better.
it's underneath as well as the sides.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
The new pruning is also very dependent upon the time of the year for the plant, right? So there's certain times of the year where the plant is in a vigorous growth phase, and that root pruning will not weaken it as much. Whereas, particularly in the early growing seasons, like, so we do our repotting in March, right? Early April, it depends upon the species, but you wouldn't do that type of operation in July or August, right? When the plant is starting to grow down, slow down in the heat. And also, we're very careful not to weaken the plant in multiple ways. So you wouldn't do root pruning and also reduce the amount of foliage all at the same time. We'll put a lot of stress by doing a lot of heavy wiring all at the same time. So kind of pace it, let the plant recover a little bit.
You can't keep them out in the winter, you have to put them in like enclosed.
You can, yes, you can. So I put mine mulched into an open garden on the ground in the wintertime. But mine are very, very hardy plants, okay? American larch, very, very hardy. Cat and Easter, very, very hardy. Anoki cypress, very, very hardy. Chinese elm, very, very hardy.
Would they be the size of these or bigger?
I have trees that are this size, all the way up to trees that are too big that I can't even lift.
But when you started, you put them out, like, in the winter, they were this size and they survived?
Yeah,
Okay.
these will go out in the garden in the wintertime.
I
Now,
think where our hardest.
there are a lot of people that have their own, like a greenhouse or a cold frame. Cold frames are typically one of the better ways of doing that, okay? And it's just something that's in or on the ground or under the ground with a clear-ish lid on top. Those things, one of the things that you have to be very careful about when using those, is keeping things watered in the wintertime. And keeping them ventilated properly so that it doesn't become a big mold haven. Keeping the rodents out, it's one thing after another when you're doing it, but, it's what we do for our children.
I do a little of both. I keep some of mine outdoors, mulched in a garden bed, like Garrett, but I built a little cold frame with acrylic and, it's not that big, and I put some of my smaller pots in there.
So do you have to dig down into the ground?
No, it sits on the ground and it has a hinged roof, so when it's gonna snow, I go and open it up and I let the snow just go in, which will then water the. Plant.
So some people in their backyard have a table that they put their trees on. And what they'll do in the wintertime is they'll take a piece of tarp or clear plastic or something like that, and they'll just drape it over their benches. And then
Water it.
weight it down with,
But they
rocks
gotta-
or
they
bricks
gotta
or something
water
like that, and then in the wintertime, you're watering a tree maybe once a month, twice a month, something like that. But the biggest thing is, I find that, on a bright sunny day, you also have to be considerate that you have to open it up so it doesn't get too hot in there in the wintertime. You gotta really be careful.
Because they need sun too, right?
Some plants need sun, so the deciduous plants that lose their leaves, they can live in a garage if you have a garage. But, this one loses all its needles, this one loses all its needles. This one keeps, a Catameester keeps some foliage during the winter time, but I don't know that it has photosynthesis. Same with an azalea, an oaky cypress, they have green on them all year round, they're evergreen. So, I would never just put it in a dark room all winter long. Just doesn't feel right to me. But,
How do you get it to get that shape of the, base? Oh.
wire, okay? Wrap it with wire. So see this tree? It's got wire wrapped all around it, and it's got guy wires pulling the limbs down and everything like that. So every branch on that tree has been wired to place it.
You have to keep it till it forms its shape.
Yeah, so after it grows for a while, it will sustain that shape. And then it grows out a little bit more. We can cut it back and wire it and manipulate it a little bit more, and it grows out, and we cut it back and wire it a little bit more. And eventually, that tree will be as thick as this tree is right here.
So when you have the wires on that now, you don't take it off until a little stronger?
So it was, earlier it was asked how long to keep it on, depending upon species, say a maple or a beech, it might only be 6 weeks. But that tree right there, I probably can keep that wire on for a year to hold that shape.
It's not as strong.
No, it's actually, it's more vigorous, but it's slower growing. Okay?
Keep in mind that there are tropical bonsai. In fact, there are thousands of species of tropical bonsai. Garrett, we didn't bring any today, and I think Garrett and I are both like-minded. We both lean towards the cold hardy trees, but many of our members in the club lean towards tropicals. And so the tropicals are bonsai that you can keep indoors during the winter. They have to be indoors because once the temperature drops below 45 or 50 degrees, they can get damaged outdoors. But you have jade, ficus, and many, and the tropical bonsai offer other opportunities. They tend to grow very quickly. They tend to grow fast. they're not trainable as much with wires, but more by pruning and shaping that way, but you tend to get more flowering species with the tropical, so not all of them will stay outdoors, but if you're interested in doing bonsai year round and indoors, you can look at the tropical ones.
So they don't, they're not, started from here, they can come from somewhere else and bring them in.
For the most part, that's correct, yeah. They come from South America,
Yeah.
Florida,
Yeah.
Asia.
Do all these have the same specialized Japanese soil? Or do you vary that?
I believe they do.
Pretty much, yeah. You know, and I think Garrett mentioned again about the watering, but all of these bonsai pots have drainage holes in the bottom. It's essential. And, so if you're thinking of starting a bonsai, you don't want to use a flower pot that doesn't have any drainage hole because the water will just sit in there and it will tend to, rot, the roots will rot and won't get enough
I
oxygen.
think that's true for any plant, you need the whole solution on
Yes.
sprouts, right? Cause it just would fill it.
So. What else?